You're listening to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 47, Our Evolution as Storytellers. Today we talk about our evolution as storytellers through the years. We talk about what our early games were like and what changed over the years. We talk about some of the pitfalls we had and how we arrived at our current campaign. We'd also like to make a shout out to Scott Legault for running a virtual Call of Cthulhu game, which was a ton of fun. We'd also like to thank Lewis, Scott, and Bill from the Dungeon Masters Dojo podcast for inviting us to be a part of it. Thank you guys. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron. And joining me in person again, thank God, like a butterfly, he had to evolve, Jared.
Hey, everybody. I do love butterflies.
No one suspects the butterfly.
No one suspects the butterfly. Oh, God, The Simpsons. Fantastic.
A lot of great quotes from The Simpsons. Hopefully our listeners are also aficionados and appreciators of The Simpsons.
Oh, man. Yeah, so how's your week been?
It's pretty good. A lot better than last week where I blew up my production server. And I probably stopped I caused a major incident. I was on 8 hours of meetings as a result. Would not recommend that to anybody, but
Are you saying don't cause a system-wide outage?
Yeah, don't cause a system-wide outage, especially when you've had a problem relating to what you ended up doing just a couple days before. Let the system get stable, then cause the outage.
Cause things to stabilize? What? Letting things stabilize? What?
But aside from all of that, and again, this is my, if you ever really mess up at work and you go, oh man, I really messed up today at work. I literally just caused 1,700 people from being able to run payrolls.
1,700 companies.
1,700 companies, yes, for being able to run payrolls, which means anywhere between 3 to 5 employees per company couldn't get their payroll that day, or for that hour. I didn't get fired for that. So you could probably make much bigger mistakes. I hear this from a lot of people where they go oh man, I really messed up. I'm going to get fired. I'm like, no, you're not. People make so many mistakes all over the place. You're not getting fired.
Sorry, I was going to say, they can't fire me. I know where all the bodies are.
Exactly.
They can't. They'd be like, if we fire Jared, he might tell people where the problems are. Yes.
Oh, man. But anyways, we were going to jump into our topic here. Jared usually asks me what the topic is, but today, we are going to talk about something that we thought about talking about for a while, which is kind of our evolution through storyteller development. Maybe you're going to find something in here that you like, but we're going to tell you how we kind of arrived, because we always talk about the detective series.
Yes,
and
we always do.
We didn't start at the detective series.
No, we did not.
I want you to know that we started as very inexperienced DMs, okay? Very inexperienced DMs, and we worked our way through it. So you can kind of see our thought process and how we got to where we are.
And we hope what you get from this is that, wherever you're at, you can also, level up your storytelling, level up your gaming, because we were there too. And that's something that we like to bring to you is the fact that wherever you are at in storytelling, we've been there, done that. We got the t-shirt and we're still doing it. And we're seeing ourselves at, a pinnacle point. We're doing really great things, really changing up what we're doing now, and that's why we're sharing everything.
Yeah, I mean, Jared's been our GM for at least 27 years at this point. 20.
Yeah, probably 20 plus years.
Yeah, at least 20 plus years. Everybody else in our group has kind of thrown their hat in the ring at least once or twice, but Jared has been the de facto GM for this long. So, Jared, how about you tell us where we got started?
So where we got started. Okay. So the best way to look at this is chronologically, I found I was kind of thinking on this is middle school. Middle school is really where we started doing the thing, late elementary, early middle school. Yeah.
Yes.
That's when we started, late elementary, early middle school. And like, as I was thinking back, I'm like, oh my God, we were doing topics that are totally inappropriate for children of that age. Because we started off with mercenaries.
Yes.
Mercenaries and gunfights. I mean, essentially was our theme.
We liked the combat.
We did.
We liked putting things into combat. I think it was really interesting because starting with combat has probably really helped our combats today.
Oh yeah,
I think,
absolutely.
You know, we were doing them forever and ever and ever.
Yeah,
but we like to beat stuff up.
We love to beat stuff up. I mean, I think the most like intrinsic question of character creation was, do I purchase grenades or do I not purchase grenades? I don't want to be overkill, so I'll purchase flashbang grenades. Like, those are overkill. Like, SWAT teams use those. Are you kidding me? Nowadays, we're like, do I want to be overkill? I don't want to be overkill. I'll take a box of matches, no gun. Like, okay, you can have a gun. Like, box of matches.
Literally every one of those stories that we did was a one-night game.
It was essentially years of single shot stories, maybe one or two. You know, like you did Night of the Nebuchadnezzar.
That was still only a one-night game. But
I thought it was two.
Oh no, we just gamed for a lot longer. We would start at like 6 and we'd game till like 3 in the morning.
Yeah, because we were young men.
We were young men. We were young and scrapping. It was great. Mom would make us brownies. I mean, it was
oh God, yes. Mom would make
the
King's cut. I'd always take the center.
It was so obnoxious. Except for the one time that Nick swooped in and took out the center.
Oh God, because I hate the edges of brownies. I do. I can't stand the edges of brownies. I like the middle cut. Why is people are like, oh my God, why do I listen to this podcast?
We're taking you way behind the curtain.
We're taking you way behind the curtain into our childhood. I mean, like, this is dumb kids being dumb.
But yeah, back to the game.
So yeah, it was essentially a series of one-shot games, maybe 2 nights tops.
A lot of characters never concluded, right?
No, they didn't really have a conclusion because there wasn't really. It was like, kill this guy.
Sometimes we would just be like in the middle of like a 4-hour combat and we never finished the combat.
No, and it was time to go home. You know, okay, I'll think up somebody else to kill next week. Mm-hmm. You know, and like I said, it's kind of a trippy looking back on that and being like, holy crap, we were in elementary school and essentially like the entire plot was assassinate or murder this person. Like, holy shit. But welcome to the 90s. You know, I mean, it was the 90s. Kids.
Oh, and we did it for obnoxious sums of money.
Obnoxious. Because we didn't understand the value of money. I think like the only value of money I knew was like comic books. Mm-hmm. Like, I know how much a comic book costs. So $1 million must buy me like, I don't know, a whole comic book store. Like, no, $1 million won't buy you, like, yeah, you could probably buy the store, but like you're gonna be broke. Like, you're gonna be cash poor. But so it was really we didn't understand the valuation of money. We the plots were very simple. Find this person, kill this person. Typically, I mean, the only change would be what's the environment.
The gatherings were terrible.
Oh God, they were. You meet in the White Room.
You meet in the White Room. You're all gathered together because you are the elite mercenaries. And I'm looking back on it. I'm like, I had the worst character. I had a rutabaga. I literally played a rutabaga.
I was rutabaga.
I was a child.
We were children.
Yes.
Like I literally played a comic character. I played Deadpool for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. I just totally ripped off Deadpool from comics and played him without the jazzy mouth, you know, like without the sly statements, you know, or funniness. I just played, you know, shoot everything and let God sort it down. So middle school, elementary, you know, you might be like, oh my God, this is my group right now. Don't panic. It's just a matter of realizing where you're at and wanting to go further. And that's really, I wish I could say that is what caused our evolution. It wasn't. It was the fact that I played one game with my brother and his friend Ken, of White Wolf, which was Werewolf the Apocalypse. It was 2nd edition. And, Ken had a story. Like, there was an actual story. And I'd never experienced that before in my life. I was like, what is this? What is going on here? So I was fascinated with it. And then I was like, okay, well, he made a story. I can do something like that. So I gather up everybody and I lay out this tome. Because if you've ever seen White Wolf books, they're so freaking thick.
Yeah, they're quite large, especially when you get to the 20th anniversary one.
You can pummel somebody with those. Like D&D, they can be thick, but like most D&D thick, they're like maybe an inch. I don't know, but like most White Wolf are like 2 or 3 inches thick. So and I think our first game was like, I think we called it like the Fetish of the 9 or the Fetish of the 7.
Yeah, again, if you're wondering what a fetish is a magical item in Werewolf.
Yes, thank you. So, essentially, the story was very discombobulated. It was very jagged. I didn't know I didn't even plan out what the armor would do.
Yeah, I think your intention was that the items would combine at the end of the game.
To create an armor.
Yes.
But I didn't know what you would do with said armor.
I think that you thought that maybe we were going to do like an epic final battle type thing.
But who was the villain?
You never really established that. It wasn't a bad... So it was the foray into kind of the long-term campaign. This became the game that we ended up doing every week. Mm-hmm. Okay? And we had varying numbers of players with this campaign. We got our group size up to about 10.
Yeah. At one point, everyone and their grandmother was invited.
And I mean, it was chaotic. It was crazy. It was a lot of fun. It was raucous. And Jared was starting to kind of figure out like, how do I get players to have their turns and like really
turns and consequences. I think that was the first story where I ever decided that there were consequences to actions.
You did that to Steve. Steve took a level 5 enemy, and it was like a Methuselah level vampire,
which is
a very
very, very old vampire.
Very, very old, very, very powerful vampire. And I think you actually killed a couple of characters in that game.
I did.
Because I think that you killed Steve's character.
Probably had nothing to do with story. It probably had everything to do
again,
with our personal problems together.
Evolution. I think that back then, Jared actually didn't have as much fear about killing characters.
No, I didn't.
We actually did it quite readily. Even in the Mercenaries games, our characters would get whacked, and we would just bring them back next week.
I think you had Rutabaga 1 and 2. I think there were 2 of them. Wasn't there Rutabaga 2? I think I made
through 3 of them, man.
There were so many Rutabagas.
Really like that Rutabaga.
You would add just like a 2 to the end and be like, "There's my character." But in our youth, it's fascinating because we would so readily just make a new character, and sometimes we'd make characters to fuck over the GM. Like, I'm just going to make a character who is going to do nothing but derail Jared's story. And I think Steve did that.
Yes. I mean, again, when you look at some of the things there,
I know Alex did. Alex literally made a character to derail my story.
Oh, he did?
Oh, yeah. He was ticked. And it had nothing to do with game. But...
Alex, if you're listening, I'm going to make a confession as a player here. I picked on you as a player when we were in the stories. I feel terrible.
Asshole kids.
Yeah, still, but I feel terrible about it because it's probably one of the reasons why he eventually quit the group.
It was. There was. I mean, yeah, I regret it too. Yeah, absolutely. Alex, if you're listening out there, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, I feel terrible about how we played back then. I know that we were just kids, but at the same time, the way that I played certainly was something that probably made you quit role playing.
I mean, and I hope he's doing great out there. I honestly don't know where he is nowadays, but you know what? Hey, if he listens, I'm sorry. That was shitty. That was terribly my bad. But like, you grow up, you mature, you realize that, hey, people have emotions instead of being kids. Like I said, at one point I was just a punk teenager. I was a punk.
Yeah, I guess that
like that word though.
in this time of the long-term campaign, this is when I mean, because we jump back to some mercenary stuff here and there.
Yeah, here and there.
But during this time period when you were developing stories, we actually kind of fleshed out the group.
We did. We found the core.
We found really the core of what our group was going to be going forward for the next couple of years.
Yep. And I mean, we would only really lose one player during that time period in high school because we lost JK.
Yeah.
You know, but that was just...
We lost Jacques, too. I mean...
Oh, we did lose Jacques. But, you know, it was life that pulled those two players away. Yeah. One of them started going to another school, and then the other one really got into drama club. Mm-hmm. And it just, you know, that Friday nights were night of performances and plays. Mm-hmm. And he was part of the tech crew.
Yeah.
And he was super into it. And it was just a passion of his. And I think that passion followed through him like throughout high school.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if he went into college with that, but.
No, he doesn't do that anymore. I don't remember what he's doing right now.
He's super into it.
I know he still lives in the area, and I know he still games now. He games with like his father-in-law and like some other people.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
A long time ago, I ran into him, and he's like, "You guys are still gaming?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh,
so am I."
Reach out to me sometime. And like,
oh wow, that's awesome. I'm really happy to hear that. So back to evolution. Yes. Instead of our well, it's important to know about our group dynamic because we started off very big and then it cut and it got smaller and smaller to the group who really were enjoying the hobby, you know, who were really into it. People who were just kind of minorly, they enjoyed it, but it was more about coming together as friends. Kind of fell off, you know, because of different. And it's interesting because our evolution, you can really see how some of our past podcasts, you know, affect this. You know, how it was driven by our experiences over the course of 20 years, you know, losing players and how to respect that and why people move on and understanding that, you know, because we as kids didn't, you know, we're immature and I'm hoping, you know, if we've got 16, 17-year-olds who are listening to this, then they're like, oh my God, like, yeah, we do lose players because of life. And I've always just axed their character, not realizing that maybe, you know, I mean, shoot, it's been, what, 15 years since we've seen Jacques? And he tells you to pick him up a line one time because he's still gaming. Mm-hmm. You know, you never know. That's why you always make sure you end relationships as positively as you can. So back to stories, though. You know, really with stories, we did start at this time crafting stories. And then I moved into my sandbox phase.
Yeah, so, well, there's a kind of a mixture here. So after high school, our group really thinned out. I think it ended up where early college, it was just me and Brian for a little while.
Yes, because Nick fell in love with every other girl in college.
Yes.
And he was also the one who went far away.
Yes. So we continued to game in that time. And this is actually the first time that Jared created the successful long-term campaign.
That was. But I want to reflect back, though, because during high school, really what we used to do, high school, early college, I would even say high school mainly, was I would sit around and we would go, okay, we'd finish the game. What game do we want to do next? And essentially, I used to give my players the choice of what system do you want to do next? Yes. And I let the system drive the theme, you know, because if we're playing mages, it's magically oriented. If
we never played werewolf, mages there. It was always werewolf, vampire, or hunter.
Yep. And essentially, you know what you're going to get. Werewolf was fighting. Vampire was going to be some sort of mix of political and fighting. And then hunter was going to be straight up scary and fighting, you know? And pretty much I just gave my players those options. And the thing that I hope people take away from this was I didn't give them the option of what kind of game do we want to do? Do we want to do an espionage game? Mm-hmm. Do we want to do a detective series? Do we want to have a lot of action? Do we not? And I didn't do any KYC back then. I wasn't looking at my players and going, okay, Aaron likes this, Brian likes this, Nick likes that, you know, and I wasn't doing that. I was coming up with stories that popped into my head.
You had a huge book of stories.
Oh my God. I had two 70-page notebooks that literally both sides of the pages would be filled with just story ideas. I mean, some of them would be large campaign ideas. Some of them would be, maybe a story about this. And, one of the things that I noticed, and this is really where I started developing, was I never, in high school, I didn't have the end picked out really very often. I didn't have the end. I'd get an image and I'd be like, this is the story I want to tell. It'd be a scene. It'd be a single freaking scene. And that's it. Comparatively to, excuse me, sorry, allergies, no COVID. So, really finding an end, when you come up with an idea, right? You're like, oh my God, I just played Cyberpunk
2077.
2077? Yeah, it's coming out soon. And you're like, oh my God, I want to tell a Cyberpunk game. Do you have an end to that Cyberpunk game? Do you have a plan to get to the end? An environment is an idea. A story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now, you might be like, if you're really jazzed up about, Cyberpunk, one, remember, are you doing those stories for your players? Are your players all jazzed up about Cyberpunk? Run your KYC. Start thinking about those options. I mean, God, if I could push one person, if you could only listen to one episode of our podcast, it'd be KYC.
KYP.
KYP.
Episode 2, KYP, and episode 1, The Gathering. Again, I know if you're probably listening to this episode, you're like, wow, they don't sound too bad. The mics are pretty good. They figured this thing out. Go back to those episodes. They sound terrible because I didn't have the mics hooked up correctly. We weren't set up correctly. But the content in those episodes, if you can bear through the audio quality, is fantastic. They're really kind of core fundamental pieces to how you build a game and to how you make the game really good for your players.
It's the foundation. That's why it was like episode 1 and episode 2, and we should rehash it just with better audio so people don't have to struggle.
In the new year, we will rehash the KYP episode and the Gathering episode. We'll dual combine them and re-talk about some of those points.
Do a special. But so, really, I wasn't doing any of that. I would get an idea from a movie, a TV show, a role-playing book, something, and I would simply say, I want to tell a story that has that scene, that element, that theme, that mood, that whatever. And then I'd be like, all right, guys, this is what we're doing. And I wouldn't even develop I'd develop a skeleton of the story until really we hit college, when I was like, I want a moment like this. Okay, but I want it at the end. And that's when I figured out the novel version.
Yeah, but you got lucky before that. So you ended up telling this story, Elders.
Well, was Elders in high school or was that in college?
It was after high school. It was somewhere between the ages like 20 and 25.
Yeah, because I thought it was after high school.
Yeah, so I don't remember if you started doing Sandbox Games with Nick.
I did.
And then, because what happened was in college, I fell out for a couple of years.
Yeah, because you were up in Michigan.
And then I came back into the game group after that, and you had done a couple of years running solo games with Nick.
No, not so. It was some with Brian, actually.
With Brian. I mean, you did like the Mafia game, and you did you did those. But I think that you did Elders before you did those games because Elders drove you to want to. So what happened is that most of the games we did in high school, sometimes we get 4 weeks out of a game. Sometimes we get like 4 months out of a game. Sometimes they would be like, make a new character tonight, we're doing a game. Make a new character tonight, we're doing a game. And like
the age of storyteller ADHD.
Yeah, we had that a lot, and we could never quite figure it out. Eventually, with Elders, we ended up, which again, I'm mixed up on the timeline here, but eventually with Elders, you said make characters, we're starting tonight. You had one scene in mind, and you were going to kind of follow Chicago by Night, which is a storyline that is in the White Wolf series, or following kind of some...
No, it was the Prophecy of the Phoenix.
It was
the ending, the going to the end of times.
Yeah, which is the story of Werewolf the Apocalypse.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was we were going to go to Chicago, and we started in like the East Coast.
Ohio.
We ended up actually landing in Ohio. That's where the gathering kind of happened. This is the first time we ever had an organic gathering.
It was.
This was the time when Jared sort of waved the hand and we both looked at each other. We weren't together and we both knew we were werewolves. Okay? And Jared kind of let that slide through to put the two together, and then we ended up...
that was the leap of faith. That was the only leap of faith.
Yeah, it was the only leap of faith. We ended up defeating a villain that first night, and then we moved on to Chicago because we both were like, hey, we're going to Chicago. We had reason to go to Chicago, and then on the way, because I was playing more of a power gamer at the time, I said, I want to level up my character. Okay? And Brian said, why the hell would we do that? And it was a player-to-player agreement. I said, if you help me do this, I will be your right-hand man in getting you to where you need to be. It was basically the contract I made with Brian. Jared didn't force that contract upon the players, and we went and did this side story. Jared pulled it out of his ass, basically.
Totally.
And from that side story, I think that's the moment that the gears really started clicking and turning for you. You went, I can do something with this.
I can start creating stories. And it did. And that's when I went kind of in that novel phase where I was like, essentially, like, I want to create an introduction, rising, climax, falling action, resolution. And I followed a very classic novel structure. And it was really this time that I started blossoming because I started reading books on writing. One of the books I read was How to Write Video Games, which was fascinating because you learn about that's really where we learned about branching decision trees. And, okay, if they pick A and they pick B and they pick C, okay. And I used to write these elaborate webs if they pick A, B, and C. And it wasn't until I got older that I was like, no, they think that they have A, B, and C. Really, there's just A, and I don't give a shit what door they pick. And it wasn't because of laziness. It was because of, if you're trying to map out every decision your players are going to make, it's a lesson in futility, because, and that's something I learned from Nick, because anytime that I threw a football, he's going to grab it and go the other way.
You were in the Sandbox game with Nick. That's where you really learn how to fancy dance.
Oh, that's where I learned dancing.
Every moment with that was, I think, you not knowing much more than what was going to kind of start to happen in the next game. Mm-hmm. And then you just kind of worked with it. Yeah. There were a couple of nights when Nick did stuff like put on the mask.
I put on the mask.
Yeah. I mean, like that was the epitome of you going, wait, you did what?
So it was for our listeners, it was a creepy haunted mask that his rival had owned, and it gave this guy immortality and a few other powers, and Nick kills him, and then it's like, I put on the mask. And I was like, you do what? It's like, I put on the mask. And I'm like, shit, I don't know what the consequences. But essentially that whole sandbox was me riding the waves of Nick's flights of fancy, of anybody's flights of fancy. And it was essentially, they make an action, I make a consequence. They make an action, I make a consequence. And it was just me putting roadblocks in the way of them obtaining their goal, which is essentially what Sandbox is. It's very akin to that. That's what you're supposed to be doing. But I found there's a better way to storytell, which is really making stories and not just building roadblocks.
Yeah, the problem with that is that all of your players have to be invested in doing their own thing so Jared can build up roadblocks.
Yep.
That is the problem with the Sandbox game, and that is where we end up trying to put a through line in a Sandbox game.
That's
where
when
that
we
kind of
tried the through line
stuff came together, but I think you really loved kind of the creativity that Nick gave you from those things, which is why you love Sandbox games so much.
I did, but it's funny as I've gotten older and I've told more stories and listened to more stories and been involved. I look back at Sandbox and I'm just like, lazy. Not that people who do Sandbox are lazy storytellers. I'm not saying that. For me, it was what I was doing was playing the ebb and flow of my players. Essentially, my players were building the story. I wasn't doing anything but putting roadblocks in the way. And as I got older and more mature, then we put that through line through. So the players who wanted to engage in the story, here was the story. But if you wanted to go off the beaten path, the forest was endless.
I think that was the first time right around then. It was either shortly after you decided to start doing that or before it is when you read Robin's Law. And that's really where the KYP episode comes together, because you realized I liked engaging in story.
Yes.
Nick liked being able to do his own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the combination of those two things don't really mesh well in a game.
No.
Because if you have one player who really wants to drive the story and one player who wants to see where the story is going and engage and find out the mystery and kind of figure it out, then you have two very... You have completely different dynamics in the story whatsoever.
Hugely.
So, I think you made a choice there. We ended up in a Wraith game that was very open world.
It was open world. And I think that was pretty much like the last game that we did with Nick.
That was one of the last games we did with Nick. Oh, that was. I think that might have been it. Yeah.
I mean, because after that he had his son, so there you go again, another example of why a player leaves. Has a child, gets married, has no more time for fun and games. Now he has to make money and raise a baby.
Yes.
So one of the things that I learned during that period was the main through line, but it really wasn't until I guess after college or in the middle of college, I started storytelling with the other group, with the other storyteller a lot. I started storytelling for them, and I realized that they couldn't do Sandbox at all. If you were like, here's the world, do with it as you please, they would be like, we go to a bar and get into a fight. And I was like, oh my God, that's the plan.
I think
it was after college.
I think that was very enlightening for you.
It was
by seeing that not everybody could do the Sandbox. I think that was like the ultimate, like, hey, we can't do the Sandbox. We've got to figure this out for, I got to figure this out. How do I get the rest of the players in? And I think that is when you read Robin's Law. Yes. I remember you gave me Robin's Law around there. And I think that changed your storytelling dramatically.
It did. And then we went back to the long epic campaigns of story, mainly story-driven epic campaigns. And that's really where we fell into the Shattered Sphere, which we did for years.
Yeah, there was a 3-part massive chronicle around Mage. We'd never touched Mage before. And, I mean, it was actually a very interesting game. And the problem, though, is with a lot of what Jared's games were, and we're going to get into this subject when we talk about the long campaign in the future. And one of the things that ends up happening is we were telling games week to week. So Jared was the GM week to week.
Yep.
A lot of the games that became successful and long were just flukes. Like, they had a good first night, and they gave Jared the opportunity to expand upon story after that first night.
Yes. They were mistakes, essentially. They were flukes. They were a series of great mistakes that led to something beautiful. Even though, and it's, I mean, like, the thing is I used to put so much stress. I guess from this episode, and I think I've pushed this to storytellers in the past, is when you decide I want to do epic campaign telling. And what I'm going to caution you is you put so much stress on yourself. You know what I mean? You are trying to say, I want this story to end this way 3 years down the road. And that is a long shot. That, sir, is a hefty goal. I know multi-million-dollar corporations that can't do that. Say where we want to be 3 years down the road. Especially with a group that might increase in size, decrease in size, get bored, need change of theme and mood, have different interests. It's quite the lofty goal. And that's where I've really come into the realization of episodic storytelling. Even if your campaign, even if you're not going to have switch out of storytellers where it's collaborative, episodic, over my years of experience, okay, take 20 plus years of experience, episodic, not saying single night, just episodic storytelling is probably your best bet. Because what you can do is you're making small, compact, very good stories. and then you're running them while you're building the next story. So even if you're the only storyteller, you're giving yourself time. So for example, you might say, I want to do a long campaign for Star Wars. Build your first story. Okay, build, and you don't tell yourself, I want this to be 59 months. You know, I want it to be 5 sessions, 6 sessions, tops. 6 sessions is great. Are you kidding me? If you guys meet every week, that's a month and a half. And that's if somebody doesn't, say like, I can't make it that night. Then it's, typically a 6-session story for us at least. Because, we have lives and things that get in the way and holidays and blah, blah, blah. Somebody goes on vacation. A 6-session story can last 2 months. That's a huge amount of time. So the thing is what I would recommend is looking at episodic that moves into a larger chronicle. The series of episodes or the series of stories becomes that large epic campaign. Now, as you get down the way, you might be like, well, I want a through line. You might tell yourself again, and take my 20 plus years. You might say, I want a through line that starts at the first game, ends at the last game. That is a lofty goal. That is a very lofty goal, and you're going to put a ton of stress on yourself. Okay? The best thing that you can do is maybe put a villain that you say, I want them to defeat him in the end. Make sure that guy can leave a lot of clues throughout different episodes, and he's got his fingers in every pie, and then your players will literally think that, oh my God, he was planning it all along. No, it was a series of stories that went to, that I just simply connected the villain to. It's a cheat. I mean, go back to our illusion of choice. It's making that magic. Okay? So look at that and make it the illusion of connectivity. Oh, yeah, he was in it all along. All you need to do is make sure that every story aligns to some goal, which could be global domination. Okay, story 1, trying to steal some nukes. Players prevent that. Story 2, trying to make money. Or, rob a bank. Why? Because I need money to buy an arms shipment. As long as that the goal of the villain of that episode matches the villain of the large story that you're trying to tell, as long as you have that, then there's connectivity. And it's the illusion of connectivity. Because the minute that you put that NPC in the ring with your players, there's the possibility of death. And then you're like, my through line was useless. It didn't last 55 stories. And you get disappointed in yourself. Don't do that. Don't do that.
It seems good because it's a literary thing that ends up happening.
It is. You think that you're going to make Tolkien.
Yes.
Tolkien didn't have to deal with players.
No, he wrote the book.
He wrote the book. He told everyone exactly what to do. We think of ourselves putting it on the shelf like they're going to remember this. Now, there are some storytellers that can do that. They have the capability. They have the setup. They have the whatever. All I am saying is, for my recommendation, create campaigns out of small sets of stories. Smaller, controllable sets of stories. Develop story A while somebody else is storytelling. Boom, I've got story A. If you have more time, develop story A and story B. So then when the players are playing story A, you're developing story C. And you're staying 2 stories ahead of your players. And it is a lot less stressful and it will be a lot more meaningful. Okay? Instead of saying, I want to plan for 2 years down the road. Because that is a fallacy.
And again, if you need more time between your games, when you're doing episodic storytelling, just say, we finished up the first session. We're going to take a week off. We'll be right back to it. Gives you time to kind of reset and get yourself adjusted for the next session. If you're the only storyteller, again, maybe you want to give this to your players and level up their gaming.
There it was.
You can really do
encourage a player.
But I mean, the whole thing here is that when we got into the episodic storytelling, I had told some longer games. I told a very long vampire game that went on for 4 or 5 months. Mm-hmm. And I actually intended it to last much, much longer, but I had to end it because of obviously real life stuff that ended up happening. I paused it, though, at a point. I thought maybe we're going to get back to it. And I always wanted to tell a longer game, but that was the longest contiguous game that I told week to week to week. Yep. We've always been a group that does week to week to week. So, I mean, I'm just going to tell you that when you are trying to build a campaign that goes week to week to week, that is an epic, long campaign, the chances of success in that
So low.
are very... You're going to have one that succeeds every now and then. You're going to have a lot that fail. If you're trying to tell a good story that you think is going to take 3 months and you've prepped it, the chances of success are just so much higher. Every one of these stories that we have told in the episodic gaming, whether it be 2 sessions, 3 sessions, 5 sessions, 8 sessions, it does not matter how many sessions it lasted for, they have all been successful.
And that's the thing. And with episodic storytelling, and especially with collaborative storytelling, because with collaborative storytelling, because another thing that I think storytellers want is they want to put the trophy up on the wall that says, I did a 2-year campaign. I am more satisfied with a game. So I'm going to, again, refer to our detective series, Red Lake. Lasted maybe a total of 8 sessions. I don't know. So I think it went maybe 2-3 months.
Yeah,
tops.
it was about 8 sessions, somewhere around there.
I am more satisfied in that than a game that I had run for almost 2 to 3 years, which is Shattered Sphere. So I got that trophy on my mantle, but that trophy doesn't mean nothing to me comparatively to the look in my players' eyes when I created a well-crafted, short, contained story that made my player literally walk out of the house and wonder if a Wendigo was going to eat him.
Yes, I did. I did. I was like, it's the dead of winter, freaking out as I left your house.
And that brings me, like, I did it. I got an emotional reaction out of my player. Seeing emotional reactions from my players is so much more rewarding. Aim for that trophy. Aim for making a story that inspires something in your players. That's the story. That's the trophy you want. Length of time trophy, congrats. Congrats. You get tea and cookies. You get the story that makes your players go, man, I almost wept. Man, I almost shit a brick. Man, that combat was so intense. Those are the trophies that we forget about as storytellers. And they're the best trophies.
They're the best compliment you can get from your players. It really is really what it kind of comes down to. I mean, really what you end up, what's really interesting with the episodic storytelling, and even if you weren't trying to do this with like a group of players, that you're just the only one doing it, Jared's right. I mean, it is in itself, our detective series is actually our chronicle.
It is.
It is the chronicle that we are telling because it revolves around the same people over the course of the year. And yes, we've been playing with these people, or a couple different sets of characters, but we've been playing in the same world, the same sandbox for over, 2 years at this point. And so this is the chronicle. We've already got the length. The length of time trophy is a testament to the fact that we keep telling stories in it.
Exactly. That's the length of, and it's the coolest length of time story. It really is, because Aaron has investment in that length of time. I have investment. We share that trophy together.
I've really honestly become a better storyteller because of it. I became a better player in a lot of the games that you did.
I have become an immensely better player, you have to admit.
Yes.
Through the detective series, immensely better player.
You've become a much, much better player. The fact that you've been able to play more has made you a better player.
It has.
Okay? And that's the one thing. If you're a DM, you're like, man, I really want to play. I really want to play. I really want to play. I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't ever play, or if you play once in a blue moon, you are probably a terrible player.
Awful.
Okay.
Sorry, hate to break it to you. You're probably awful.
You are probably a terrible player. And it's just, you don't know it because you never do it.
Exactly. Like I thought, I'm a great player.
Just the way that your players are probably terrible DMs right now.
Awful.
Okay. They can become good DMs.
They can become great DMs.
With just trying to take a couple of small things and trying to do something with them. This is a lot of the reason why we made the podcast in general was because of this, was because when we started doing the storytelling, I'm like, I now have experience in it. I have things that I've learned from doing it. I can see some of the things that Jared has done in it. I have advice that I can actually give to other people now.
Yeah.
As part of this. And so that's really where it came to this point of, leveling up your game. Get your players involved in this. This would be one of those episodes to give to your players and to kind of show them what to do.
Yeah, because they're going to evolve and they're going to level up their gaming.
But there's also a place for you to say that if you're in an earlier place in gaming, or if there's something that you really like to do, like there are always ways that you can kind of change and update your gaming.
Evolve,
and really just get yourself to that point where you can become a better DM for your group, a better GM for your group, a better master of ceremonies for your group, a better mother.
Like I said, I bought that book. I bought that book. I didn't pirate it off the internet. Don't worry, I'm buying a hard copy. Don't worry. I'm not that terrible a person. Movies I pirate. Every freaking. I don't think I've bought a movie in years. Why am I saying this? That's terrible. But no, it's, I think Aaron ended on a good point right there. It's inspire those players, grow those stories, and evolve. Get up there. Reach for the stars. They say, reach for the stars, because if you miss, at least you end up in the clouds.
And don't be afraid to try different things.
Don't be afraid.
That's what we did. If you haven't tried some of these things, maybe your group will love them, maybe your group will hate them. But where we found the most success in our evolution was actually getting back to something way more simple and way
instead of trying to write Tolkien with players.
Instead of trying to write the big epic, we're just writing really great short stories.
Yep.
And we're having a blast.
A freaking awesome time.
Is there anything else you want to add to this, Jay?
No, I think that's a great place to end it at.
Perfect. All right. Well, we hope that you enjoyed the podcast. We're always looking for new ideas for different episode topics and different suggestions. We did answer a couple listener questions in some previous episodes. And so, we're happy to answer your questions or happy to get your feedback.
We would love to hear from you.
Yeah.
I get, as I've said in previous podcasts, I get so excited when we get listener feedback.
Happy to get your opinions. Do you like to tell stories this way? What kind of stories do you like to tell? Let us know. We'll introduce them to another podcast and we'll go over them. But if you do like the podcast, contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. Otherwise, subscribe, share, review. Reviewing does help us make us more searchable. If you prefer the medium of YouTube, we're on YouTube. Jared?
Smash that like button.
Thank you.
Smash it.
But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for us. So for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, guys.
Have a great week, everyone.